Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. I'm still on the search for the legendary scrolls of learning how to do mitosis, but that's not why you called, of course. This video is about Keir the traitor Starmer again, because I want to talk about the Southport cover-up, because turns out there's some coppers who for once aren't more bent than a 9-bob note, who actually wanted to come out about this. These people in the police force of, I believe it was Merseyside, they wanted to come out and say what Axel Reduku Banana was. But when Keir the traitor Starmer found out that some of these coppers actually wanted us to hear the truth about Southport, Keir the traitor Starmer was quick to lock it down and said that basically you are not to report the truth on this. He effectively told them to basically make up this story, this spin a yarn, as it were, to make Reduku Banana look like an innocent Welsh stroke number one, an innocent Welsh choir schoolboy choir. Oh my god, can't get the words out. Innocent Welsh schoolboy choir boy. You know what I mean? It's barely been a fucking minute. I'm already having a stroke. So I guess I'll take this moment just to also reiterate, to correct myself on my last video. So I mentioned about Tommy Robinson being the most persecuted journalist. I guess someone brought up, to be fair, Khashoggi. Was it Adnal Khashoggi or something like that, over in the Middle East, who I think ended up getting offed because he was reporting the truth. But it doesn't change the fact that Tommy Robinson is effectively the most politically persecuted. Stroke number two, we're going a stroke a minute. The most politically persecuted journalist in Britain. That's the trouble as you get older, as you become like me. You might want to say the truth, but in the end, your tongue always tries to stop you. But I digress. Back onto the point of Southport. It's a shame that a few good men, no, not the film, a few good men do exist in the police force who aren't willing to put out the truth. If only there were more coppers like him, I'm sure our police force would be a lot more robust and a lot more reasonable than what we have today. I know some people will go out of their way to say that not every copper is like the 9-bob note bent asses, and a lot of these people are just following orders. Nearly my third stroke, Jesus. But here's the way I slice it. You could say the same thing about a demographic of people during the Second World War. And yes, I do see that cop car going by. Anyway, you could say the same thing about that demographic of World War II. But that's the trouble these days. A lot of these people don't want to hear that side of things. I don't think they understand that these police are not meant to be two-tier. They're meant to be fair on everyone. Now, I didn't know this, but apparently Rwanda actually has a bit of a machete culture going on. So I guess it's quite understandable that Reduku Banana would end up being very proficient with blades. Well, it's that or his parents taught him, and whichever way you slice it, it's a pretty damn scary outlook. I mean, what can we expect when we're importing the third world into our country? Were these wankers honestly expecting people from the Middle East to actually bring in something that actually benefits our society? I mean, okay, I grant not every person from the Middle East is an absolute dick. However, if you're importing the worst of a third world shithole, you can't be surprised if they start turning our country into a third world shithole, quite frankly. And the same obviously applies for Rwanda. We have a machete culture in Rwanda, and these three lovely specimens, obvious sarcasm, they brought along that machete culture, and look what happened. 10 people nearly offed. We had 3 beautiful girls dial M for you-know-what by this T-wrist scumbag. And in the meantime, Keir the traitor Starmer knows all about this shit, and he's doing everything he can to get the police to keep quiet. But of course the mainstream media won't tell you this. You know the drill, folks, because say it with me, it doesn't suit the narrative. Like I said, Not every person from whatever country or culture is going to be like this. I can't stress that enough. But honestly, can we really be surprised if, as I said, we bring the worst and we get the worst? The more you fuck around, the more you're going to find out. But as said, here's Keir the traitor Starmer saying, we don't want Axel Radaku Banana looking like a terrorist, even though he's got a little bit of ricin stored under the bed. He's got an excerpt from an Al-Qaeda manual. The scum was referred to prevent 3 times, and yet nothing was done about it. And while I accept that some partial responsibility for all this has to lie with prevent, as they could have stopped this, you could even say prevented this. Yes, I'm sorry, someone will shoot me later. Anyway, they could have prevented this. They didn't. And then just to round it all off, we have people who, some of them fell for misinformation, including myself. So I have to take some responsibility. I accept there is that part of things. However, a lot of misinformation, in effect, came from Keir the traitor Starmer. He was the one who ordered the narrative of he's an innocent choir boy from Wales and he wouldn't hurt a fly, or he had mental health issues, or he's not right in the head, or some other bollocks that they'll come out with. Yet if they actually came out and told us the bloody truth, these riots that took place would not have happened, quite frankly. But it doesn't matter whether or not people were vying for blood, as it were. If the truth was out, rather than kept in, then I guarantee you we wouldn't have 3,000 political prisoners. I guarantee you that we wouldn't have seen half the damage that was committed, and most importantly, we wouldn't have seen a grandad off himself in prison. Keir the traitor Starmer has blood on his hands, and that cold bitter truth is never going to go away. It's now just a matter of how much blood is going to be on his hands, considering there are other people that he has persecuted, like the OAPs, who are no longer getting their winter fuel payment because Keir the traitor Starmer would rather send our taxpayer money off to Ukraine. And speaking of Ukraine, just to deviate a little bit, isn't it funny how we've given more money to Ukraine than any other country in the last 24 hours? 5.4 was it? Or was it 5 point... It was around 5.5 billion pounds to Ukraine, which was more than the entire EU combined. Bearing in mind those wankers were getting 55 million pounds a day from us in gross pay for us to get nothing in return. Bear that in mind. All this obviously while we were part of the EU, by the way. And yet these wankers can't even afford to pay them half as much as we've given Ukraine. But obviously, a lot of people who actually have some common sense wouldn't have sent that money to Ukraine, considering some of the stuff I've mentioned before, namely the fact that 50 pence to the pound at least is not being put to the war, it's being put to luxuries for Mr. Zelensky, the dictator, or maybe I was right first time, to go and have a life of luxury while people die in a war. Or the fact that Keir the traitor Starmer is trying to send 30,000 people of our forces, which is nearly half of our armed forces, 76,000. So he's sending 30,000 off, or trying to. We don't even have enough kit to give 10,000 soldiers to Ukraine, let alone 30. So would that be another classic case of Diane Hippopotamus actually giving the wrong figures again? I wonder. But whichever way you slice it, Keir the traitor Starmer and the EU and a lot of NATO and what have you, they all seem more interested in keeping this war going. While the US, who hasn't given a single penny to Ukraine, why? Because they don't want this shit to continue, are doing everything they can with peace talks, which are obviously being attacked by the usual suspects in the establishment and NATO and the EU, because they want this war to continue. Not a problem. Anywho, sorry, I was just helping someone out, because obviously they want to get to the city. Anyway, this is the cold bitter truth about Ukraine. Putin and Trump are the only sensible people in the damn room right now. They're the only ones who are actually doing everything they can to get a peaceful solution out of this shit. But Ukraine doesn't want that. Or sorry, Zelensky doesn't want that. Keir the traitor Starmer does not want that. The EU and NATO do not want that. So they are doing everything they can to undermine these talks, which again is something the mainstream media are going to be very reluctant to tell us. It's a shame, really, that we have such power and money-hungry fascists running the vast majority of governments and powers in this world. If we had less of them, I guarantee you a lot of this shit would have ended just like that. But we're not going to get anywhere while Keir the traitor Starmer still runs in power. We need a party that represents us. And while I accept as devil's advocate here of what my own beliefs are, that reform are probably the best chance that we've got for a different government over the uni party that is Lib Lab Con, I personally still feel that we are best and better off with UKIP, to which I have now started to sort out my letter to Nick Tenconi, to which I'm holding it upside down and the wrong way round. Anyway, I've got this letter that I will read out, probably when I get off the bus, about what I've said about this, basically. Now you know what, sod it, I'll read it here. So, the letter I've got. For the attention of Nick Tenconi. I hope this letter finds you well. It is a breath of fresh air to see a politician with some clout and common sense fighting for his country to put British people and their values first. You provide hope and inspiration to a lot of people, including me in these dark and foreboding times. I have, for a while now, been thinking of joining UKIP. While I am currently in full-time employment, it is my absolute belief that rather than work in administration, I want to use my 6 years of political activism to make a difference for and leave my mark in my local town of Norwich. What has happened to our beloved country is nothing short of abhorrent, and it is my absolute affirmation that while this was partially caused by the Lib Lab Con Uni Party, ultimately the man wholly responsible for the accelerated decay of Britain as a whole is none other than the guy who I dub Keir the traitor Starmer. Between Southport, tax hikes, the uncontrolled immigration and the unlawful imprisonment of journalist Tommy Robinson, to name just a few, Keir the traitor Starmer has done unrivaled damage to the UK over these last 8 months. I started my YouTube channel in mid-2018 and have covered various topics under my old alias, The Beamer, and present one, Abatha_X. I can no longer sit idly by while this Prime Minister desecrates our nation. Anything I can do to help within reason, even becoming MP for Norwich, I am willing to do to help out. I want to be part of change, and I believe this is the time to achieve it. I look forward to hearing from you. Yours sincerely, Matthew. The way I slice it, do I think Farage is the right person to lead the party? Reform, that is. No, I don't. I do not think that Reform is the right party for us, quite frankly, after all the nonsense that has gone on with them. However, I am willing to put that aside and vote Reform if a leader like Rupert Lowe is elected, since he has gone out of his way to defy Farage and actually put a letter in to the courts and say that basically what's happening with Tommy Robinson is wrong. Now, I will play devil's advocate for Farage here, and I will say Farage did at one point say that yes, he's got a record as long as your arm, as far as being a criminal is concerned. However, he had to admit, and he did admit, that what's happening to Tommy right now is wrong. So you know what? I will give some small credit to Nigel Farage for at least realising what's happened to Tommy is fundamentally wrong. Now, another thing to point out as well is some people have been pointing out that Tommy can't go to an open prison which I have been preaching, as there is still the community of Muslims who are in the open parts of prison as well. And some of these people will be adamant believers of the Shia or Sunni sides of Islam. You know, the ones that want to kill us all, basically. So I guess in a sense I have been a little tunnel vision on that. But it doesn't change the fact that I think he would be far better off in an open prison versus being locked up in solitary confinement all the time. And I know they'll sit there and say they're doing it for his own safety. You could put him somewhere safe that doesn't involve locking him in solitary confinement. And as I've said before, this is not a matter of left and right. This is a matter of what's right and what's wrong. And at least Farage can understand that what's happening to him is fundamentally wrong. I only wish he had admitted this shit earlier, quite frankly, because he probably could have avoided half of the stick that he got from when he libelously slandered Tommy. But as far as this Southport nonsense is concerned, the Southport cover-up, Keir the traitor Starmer definitely has a lot to answer for. 100%. He can't get out of this. I would hope that there are people out there, as we speak, who are willing to basically take Keir the traitor Starmer to task on this. I think if we end up taking him to court and sending him to prison for his war crimes against Tommy Robinson, because they have breached Article 3 of his Human Rights Act, as I've said many times, and if they hold him to account over the lies he spread about Southport and the blatant fraud that he committed during the election because he failed to put the right address on the form, I reckon we can get some serious revenge on Keir the traitor Starmer. I have said I do not want any harm to come to Keir the traitor Starmer. I tell you what I do want for Keir the traitor Starmer, though. I want his political career over. He is not fit to be a Prime Minister. He's not fit to be an MP. I wouldn't trust him to run a bath, let alone the bloody country. So anything that damages Keir the traitor Starmer's political career is only a good thing. It's not often I wish negative things on people, but for Keir the traitor Starmer, yeah, I hope his career goes up in flames. I mean, he was clearly a crap human rights lawyer, and he's now being an even worse Prime Minister. And I want to know what kind of drugs that Labour was smoking to allow that man to be in their party in the first place. I don't think even the phrase high as a kite is enough. I think high as the US space station. Yeah, a few things happening. Anyway, I think they were as high as the US space station, to be brutally honest. Not even as high as a kite to let this man run the country, or run the party for that matter. I think even a freshly born baby would actually do a better job of running the country over Keir the traitor Starmer. Like literally, wow, would do a better job than what Keir's doing. The bottom line is that this Southport issue now is coming to a head. I mean, he can't honestly expect his career to last much longer, considering when all of the truth comes out over Southport, which already as is, there's a substantial amount, he's not going to be able to stand for Prime Minister. His reputation is going to be a smouldering ruin, quite frankly. It is going to be the same smouldering ruin that Bethesda was when they released Fallout 76 in its broken, buggy state. I know some people are not gamers here, but trust me, you need to see that shit to see what I'm talking about. Another company we could talk about as far as how their reputation is in flames, not that it wasn't already, because of obviously Savile and all that. Yeah, you guessed it, the Beeb. The Beeb have been found out that they were actually trying to promote pro-Hamas people, pro-Hamas propaganda. They were supporting a terrorist group, a prescribed terrorist group. How is the Beeb going to live this one down? I mean, we all thought it was bad enough when we found out they supported and covered up Jimmy Savile. you know, the prolific tiny Coccosaurus Rex who decided he had a fondness for children. I mean, can I really be surprised at this point that they're doing this? Not really, considering this is the Beeb we're talking about. Thank you. The Beeb is just the gift that keeps on giving, or the reputational destroyers that keep on destroying themselves. Like, you could literally give these guys, well, you could put them in a padded room with nothing in that room, and they will still find a way to hurt themselves. And the Beeb wonders why they're losing people paying the TV license fee. They wonder why they're hemorrhaging money right now. Maybe it's something to do with all these scandals and supporting terrorists, rather than, oh, I don't know, report impartially and without bias the news based on facts. I know these days it's such a novel concept, but the BBC should really try it. Maybe they could actually claw back some of the credibility they lost in that bottomless pit. Now, you know what? On second thought, I think they got two hopes of that shit. No Hope and Bob Hope. State-funded propaganda destroying themselves. Isn't it amazing to see? Just watching them all clamber over each other to see who can twist the knife in themselves the fastest or the hardest. I think they've been playing too much pop-up pyro. Anyway, these guys seem hell-bent to destroy themselves. And it's only going to get worse the more they keep doing this. It's a bit like Keir the traitor Starmer. They're both a match made in heaven, quite frankly. Both willing to destroy themselves. One's doing it through the Southport scandal, and the other one is doing it through child G gangs and obviously covering up Mr. Savile and supporting terrorists. And isn't it funny that I have had the first 2 minutes, I had 2 strokes. Now it's been 20 minutes and I haven't had a single one. I mean, that is the trouble. It is completely random. Well, whichever way you slice it, this Labour Party is going down in flames. And all they seem to be doing is pouring on more gasoline. And the BBC has brought in pyrotechnics so they can at least put on a bloody show whilst they go up in smoke and flames alongside Keir the traitor Starmer, quite frankly. Well, you keep blaming everyone else, Keir the traitor Starmer. You keep living in your little utopian bubble. You keep sweating your tiny little bollocks off because you know full well that reform is coming to destroy you, whether it's at the local or the general elections. That's the thing. He wanted to focus on hypocrisy. And what did he do? He outed himself as a hypocrite, and he didn't really make that much of a dent at all. In fact, his attack was about as effective as a wet noodle, quite frankly. This man does not understand how much he is out of his depth. Way out of his depth. Like, you'd almost think he was going searching for Atlantis. He's that far out of his depth. Well, at the end of the day, Keir the traitor Starmer, you are going to have to face the music. You're going to have to face the people of Britain as well. And you will see the absolute disgust in their faces as you look upon Indigenous people like me or others. And they think, what a wanker that he was. What a traitor that he was. What a fascist he was. What a sectarianist bastard he was. He is not a man fitting of Prime Minister. He is a man fitting of the title of Prime Fuck-Up.